please.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Bernbo Yohui, for inviting me again. And thank you to everyone who is present here tonight. I also want to thank everyone who has been so welcoming to Vermo Miaoguang and I to Cebu last month. Yeah, it's been last month. It seems like it was just yesterday. Um, it was my first time to Cebu, even though it was my second time in the Philippines. And the first thing that struck me was the warmth of the weather at that time. And then what struck me next is the warmth of everyone. So it's been a really, really joyful experience. Thank you to every single one of you who has been so welcoming. And then hopefully maybe in the future we will see each other again in Cebu. But then that's up to my supervisor. we'll have to see what Pero Wang says about that. But yes, thank you very much. So given that today is just really a gathering of Dharma friends, I don't want to feel like it has to all come from me. It doesn't have to be a lecture. And also today's discussion is pretty interesting. So why don't I just share my screen and then let's just jump into our discussion. And next. Okay. Sorry. Oops. Hang on. Okay. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint? Can you see my PowerPoint? Okay, so our topic for today is 18 Arhats. Hopefully you have read the article. So I think I'm just going to go into some of the discussions that I have planned. Starting with the very first question, what is Arhat? Right, what is Arhat? I think, being in a Buddhist temple, and no matter which tradition you go to, you can go to Theravada tradition, Tibetan, or Mahayana. Arhat is a term that is quite popularly heard in Buddhist temples, or in Chinese is 罗汉, 阿罗汉. So why don't we discuss this term first, given our topic is on the 18 Arhats. Have you heard of this term Arhat before? And if you have, what is your understanding of it? So this is a time where make everything awkward by waiting for you to speak.
What I understand of that in previous classes is that it is somebody who has attained enlightenment on their own after studying about Buddhism, about truth.
Mm-hmm. That is very, very, very close. I would say the only thing is that the part about attaining enlightenment on their own. So the group of people who do their own practice and then attain enlightenment on their own, we usually group them as Pratika Buddhas. Yeah. So everything else is correct. Arhats are enlightened beings. So that's very true. And then they do attain enlightenment after undergoing their Buddhist practices. Yes. I think I saw Gershon raising a hand. Would you like to share?
Yeah, Shifu, good evening. It's so nice to see you again. And from my understanding, for being an arhat is that it is an individual that who has achieved, like Ate Obi said, perfect enlightenment for my own understanding. And also, it is somehow he understand or understood about liberation and how he can able to escape from the cycle of birth and rebirth, or or the samsara. And also, I think um he, I'm not sure, but I think he's also a person that he's really quite happy every time and attain like bliss or nirvana.
Mm. Yes, very good, Gershon. Everything what you have said is correct. So Arhat, first of all, they are enlightened beings. And then given that they are enlightened, they will of course no longer be subjected to the cycle of samsara. And therefore they will of course attain the bliss of nirvana. So very good. All of what you have said above are the definitions of what an arhat is. So going into the more traditional understanding of arhat, so arhat is someone who has destroyed the afflictions and all causes for future rebirth, and who thus will enter nirvana at death. So here are some very important key points that we can use to define arhat. First of all, they have destroyed their afflictions. Now, in Buddhism, we always talk about afflictions and destroying afflictions. So this is actually something pretty what's the word? There is a definition for affliction. So when we say affliction, what do we usually mean? It's not a general term, it's actually pretty specific. When we talk of affliction in Buddhism, what do we usually talk about?
Is it some kind of suffering, things that cause suffering?
Very good. First of all, obviously, when we have afflictions, we will suffer. Very good. But what are the types of afflictions that Buddhism usually talks about?
Is it delusion?
Very good. Delusion is one of them. Yes. Delusion is one of the very big afflictions that we have. Yes. And there are two more. Yes, Gershon.
Shifu, I think it's also some sort of like what you call this, the attachment and like hatred and aversion. So
Yes.
I think those are,
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have two of the correct answers. So hatred, and then just now Marlene mentioned delusion. So we're missing one to the party.
Ignorance,
Ignorance is similar to delusion. Yeah.
greed,
Yes, very good. So in Buddhism, when we talk about afflictions or fannao, there's actually something very specific behind this in a way that we think is kind of a more general term. When we talk about affliction, it always refers to the afflictions of greed, hatred, and ignorance. So, of course, we will also see words like aversion for hatred, that is synonymous. So it's okay, whichever one you use it. The same with delusion and ignorance, they are also synonymous. And then different Buddhist teachers will use different English words for it. But again, that is not that big of an issue. So no matter if we call it greed or hatred, aversion, or ignorance and delusion, these are the three big afflictions that Buddhism always refers to. So when we look at the word one who has destroyed the afflictions, is very specific. They use the affliction. Just as a side note, this is a definition from the Princeton Dictionary of Buddhism. So the dictionary didn't define afflictions as they destroy all afflictions or destroy afflictions. So they use the to refer to something that is very specific. And again, it's our three poison. The three poison is the root of our suffering, the causes of our suffering. And if we can destroy greed, hatred, and ignorance, then obviously we will no longer have any suffering, right? So this is the first understanding that we can build on Arhat, is that Arhats, they have destroyed their afflictions. In other words, they have destroyed greed, hatred, and ignorance. And in other words, if they have destroyed the three poisons, if they will no longer give rise to any of the three poisons, that means they will no longer do unwholesome things. Because of it, when we are afflicted, we will create unwholesome karma. But if we are not afflicted, then there is no reason for us to cause any unwholesome karma. If we do not cause any unwholesome karma, that means we are no longer building all of these causes that will lead to future rebirth. So this is a very, in a way, this is one of the most fundamental ideas in Buddhism, the idea of cause and effect, the idea that, the idea behind samsara is that because of our afflictions, we create a lot of action. And usually, these afflictions are unwholesome. And with unwholesome afflictions, we will have a lot more suffering. This suffering can be mental and physical. And when our mental well-being, right, our mentality is full of suffering, it's not going to help us to make a lot of good decisions. Actually, it will help us to make a lot of bad decisions, thus creating more bad karma. And this cycle goes on and on and on and on until we find a way to break it. So this is why we want to practice Buddhism. So this idea, this framework, is the fundamental teaching of the Buddha. And why don't we just use a very simple, what's the word? Example. So recently I like to use the example of driving because I have been driving a lot around Kaohsiung. I'm also teaching at one of our branch temple called Puxian Temple in Kaohsiung. So if I were in a very bad mood that day, and then, for example, I was running late. I was running late, and then I have a lot of afflictions. My afflictions is like, why am I running late, right? Why did I do this to myself? Now I have to drive really, really fast. So when I drive really, really fast and then there's a yellow light, instead of stepping on the brake pedal, I step on the gas pedal and then zoom right past just as a yellow light turns red. Right? And then maybe I break several traffic rules along the way with the same mentality that I've already broken one traffic rule. The other doesn't matter anymore as long as I get to my class on time. So just this one little example, I keep building up the momentum for creating more unwholesome action. This unwholesome action doesn't have to be like huge, it doesn't have to be like killing someone or stealing something, but just little things that breaks the rule. These little unwholesome things. And if we can't stop ourselves from that cycle, this is what we'll always be circulating in. This endless cycle of, we call it the cycle of affliction, action, and suffering. So this is a cycle. 祸业苦, 祸 affliction, and then 业 your action or your karma, and 苦 suffering. This is a cycle. 祸业苦. So, however, for an arhat, they don't do that. If I were an arhat, I would say, well, I would stop my problem right at the beginning. I would say it's time to go so that I can escape the traffic rush, and then I don't need to drive 120 kilometers per hour and then running through 5 red lights in order to get to Puxian Temple. I don't need to do that because I have the foresight of making a good action, right? So for an arhat, they have destroyed all their afflictions. So can we just imagine for a second that we do not have any greed. We do not have any hatred. We do not have any ignorance. That is Arhat. They are no longer troubled by any of this negativity. And obviously, everything that they do or think are wholesome. They will be always creating wholesome karma. Thus, they will no longer create the causes for future rebirth. And when they finally die, after living their time here on earth, they would enter nirvana. So this is a very traditional understanding of what an arhat is. And in a lot of the older, in a lot of Buddhist sutras, you will see these 4 levels of arhatships, which starts right at the bottom. It's called Shrotrapana. And then Sakardaganim, and then Anagamin, and then Arhat. So you start from the bottom, and then you move your way up to these 4 levels, finally accumulating in arhatship. So where can we see these terms? For example, in the Diamond Sutra. In the Diamond Sutra, these 4 levels of arhatship are mentioned. So you do often see them in Buddhist sutras. So just a little bit on the 4 levels of arhatship. So if you attain the first level, it says it means a stream enterer. That means you are finally stepping into the stream of enlightenment. You are finally on your right path, right? And then what about the second level, once returner? This means that for a person who has attained the second level of arhatship, they only need to be reborn one more time in the heaven and also in the human realm. So they only need to return to the human realm one more time. And then after that one rebirth, they will attain arhatship. And for a nagamin or non-returner, if they attain the level of non-returner right here on earth, they don't even need to come back to the human realm. And they will be able to attain arhatship very soon after. And of course, Arhat. Arhat is the ultimate level. In traditional Buddhism, even the Buddha himself is also called the Great Arhat, right? So perhaps if you go to Theravada temples, or if you read texts like the Nikaya Sutras, the Agama Sutra or the Nikayas, you will see that they will call one of the honorific of the Buddha is Arahant, the Great Arhat. So the Buddha himself is also considered as an Arhat, because obviously he has overcome all of these afflictions, and then will no longer return to this earth as a human being, right? So these are the 4 levels of arhatships. And if we read the sutras and also the commentaries, it also helps us to understand what are the steps we can take in order to move up in our Buddhist practice. So this is not just, something that we read in the sutras. This is also a guideline for you, for all of us as a Buddhist practitioner, that here are the levels of attainment that we can move forward to. Because in each of this level, obviously, we are going to let go of more afflictions. We're going to have less attachment. So, step by step at the end, all of us can also attain this level of no afflictions and no rebirth and ultimate bliss. So this is the first question I have. What is an arhat? And now we all know what is an arhat. An arhat is, in other words, an enlightened being who has gotten rid of all of their afflictions. And then once their physical body dies, they enter into nirvana, into perfect bliss. Okay. So do any one of you have anything to add on to this section? Any question perhaps? No? Okay. Then let's move on.
Oh, I have a question.
Oh, yes.
So the non-returner, within
Mhm.
that same life, can become an arhat?
If I am not mistaken, I think they will have one more rebirth in heaven.
Mm.
I think that's it. But they will no longer return to the human realm. Yes.
So, Shifu, the Eli quota,
Mhm.
the level is returned to Saha world, but the non-returner is already in heaven. So it's like in the Dasa Bhumika, there's a correlation.
Tasa Bhumika.
Yeah, in the 10 grounds, something similar.
Yes. In a way, yes. I do not actually really remember the level of comparison, but what I remember is that usually if you attain arhatship, you are on the same level as the bodhisattva of the 8th ground. Arhat is that 8th ground. And
Okay.
so we understand that there are 52 levels to the bodhisattva. So the non-returner is also, close to one of those levels.
Okay.
Yeah. So for one's returner, they will be reborn once. They attain the enlightenment, they attain the arhatship right here on human realm. And then for one's returner, they will be reborn once in the heavenly realm, and then once again back to the human world. So that means that's why they are called once returner. They return one more time as a human to be reborn once again as a human after attaining the arhatship. The second level of arhatship in human form. Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about the main topic of today, which are the 18 Arhats. So who are the 18 Arhats? Now that we understand, the definition of an Arhat, and then who are these 18 Arhats? Have you seen the statues before in the temples? You probably have. So the 18 Arhats are Arhats, so selected by the Buddha to remain in the world until the coming of Maitreya Bodhisattva or Maitreya Buddha. So in the sutra, we always see in the very first paragraph, right? The sutra would say, oh, the Buddha is at Jetavana Grove with a gathering or an assembly of 1,250 bhiksu or arhats. So usually during the Buddha's time, a lot of his disciples did attain arhatship. So the Buddha taught to them, and then they just immediately understood it. They practiced it very well, and then they attained arhatship. But obviously, they didn't just pass. Their physical body didn't pass away immediately. They followed the Buddha around. They shared the Buddha's teaching with other people, and at the kind of like sometime at the end of the Buddha's life, several of these arhats, several of these disciples are specifically selected by the Buddha to remain in this world until Maitreya Buddha, come as the next Buddha, right? So these are the 18 arhats. And if you read a lot of the literature, some will say there's actually only 16, but let's not worry too much about the number itself. But understand that these are this particular group of arhats, this particular group of disciples are very special to the Buddha in that they are asked by the Buddha to stay in this world, to preserve the Dharma, to share the Dharma, and to protect the Dharma. So even now, in a lot of our some of our Dharma services, we would invoke the names of some of these arhats, and then invite them to participate in our Dharma services. Especially if there's an offering banquet, we will invite them to also join us right here. So these Arhats, they are very special. And this is why in a lot of temples, especially in Chinese Buddhism temples, you will see them venerated in parts of the temple. So if you have been to the Shilai temple, this is their Arhat garden, and you can see there are 18 of them. You know, some of them are meditating, some of them are riding on tigers, on deers, some of them have their huts open. You know, they're in various shapes and form. But these are the 18 of them, and then they are the protector and preserver of the Dharma for Shakyamuni Buddha until the next Buddha comes along. So here is a list of their names, and can I go through them? Let's go through them, and then I just want you to tell me which of the names have you heard of. So Pindola Barajvaja, Kanakavatsa, and then I'm just not gonna read all of these names. Just look through it and then tell me if any of these names sounds familiar to you.
Rahula Shifu.
Yes, Rahula. Very good.
Ajita.
Ajita, yes.
Also Nagasena.
Shuddhapantaka.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shuddha Pantaka. Very good, very good. Basically, it's like these three people.
Nagasena also.
Yeah, Nagasena. But I think this Nagasena isn't the Nagasena that we know, because the Nagasena that we are thinking of is from the sutra. You know, the conversation between King Milinda and Bhiksu Nagasena. And that one happened like many, many years after the Buddha. So probably not the Nagasena that we are all thinking of.
Vajraputra Shifu.
Vajraputra. Uh-huh.
I just can't remember where I came across.
Okay. So a lot of these names, we actually don't really know a lot of these names. I mean, the most we can say is 5 of them. Like, we kind of know 5 of them, or maybe 6, but we don't really know who they are, and then where do they come from, and then why were they chosen in specific. So this is what Venerable Master was talking in this article. So now we are moving into the article, because the Venerable Master say, why are these 18 people specifically chosen? Why not other disciples? Why not female disciples of the Buddha, who actually many of them attained arhatship? So here we are now entering into the big discussion of today, which is, hey, are the 18 Arhats a closed list? And if so, why? And if you do not agree, why?
Shifu, in the context of Sakyamuni's time, it's supposed to be a closed list. But in the context of today, as written or a reminder by the Venerable Master, we're not supposed to think of it as an endpoint, like just to accept that only 18 Arhats are possible. So it depends on the context on how we look at the Arhats.
Very, yeah. So it really does help, keep us thinking about this. Again, I think I've mentioned this before in our previous sharing, is that in the Buddha Dhamma Pure and Simple, the Venerable Master really wants us to think about our received tradition. So in Foguangshan, our received tradition is not just Buddhism, but Chinese Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism in particular. And, cultural aspect of Buddhism, including the 18 Arhats, are very much part of our tradition. You see this in basically all of the traditional temples, Chinese temples. They do have 18 Arhats around them. And then there are always these 18 disciples. It's always the one with the long eyebrows, and then the one riding a tiger, the one riding a dragon, and so on. It's always the 18 of them. So Venerable Master wants us to think, is this a closed list? Is it possible to expand on it? So this is from the article itself. Venerable Master say, exclusivity and over-conservatism. Sorry, I'm blocking my own. Okay. Exclusivity and over-conservatism in Buddhism, where changes cannot be made to what has previously been decided, are forms of jealousy that leave no room for improvement. So Venerable Master is telling us that we should not think of the 18 Arhats as a closed list. In fact, the Venerable Master also listed many other lists that we find in Buddhism. For example, the four great bodhisattvas, the 4 sacred mountains in China, the 3 baskets, the Tripitaka, the 3 baskets, the 12 division of the teaching. So all of this terminology that we learn that comes in a bunch of lists, Venerable Master is asking us to rethink about why are we doing this, and is it okay to include more? Because why did he want to include more people? Why did he want to include, open up the list instead of just continuing the tradition?
Are you asking Shifu?
Well, I'm just gonna finish this part and then I can ask the question again. So because Venerable Master say, since each and every person is able to become a sage and even a Buddha, are they not able to become Arhats then? So who can be on this list? Venerable Master is trying to tell us that everybody can be on this list. As long as, for example, for the 18 Arhats, as long as this person is credible, we found statements of this person attaining enlightenment, attaining arhatship in the sutras, then we can also learn about them. We can also add them into this list. So now the question for you would be, who would you like to add on into this list of 18 Arhats? If we have we have the powers, right? Who do you think can be on this list of 18 Arhats?
Shifu, easily Venerable Master.
Venerable Master, okay. And would you like to give us a reason?
Because I think with the way he lived, he destroyed his afflictions. The afflictions.
Very
If-
good.
Yeah, if the definition of an Arhat is someone who has destroyed the afflictions, then definitely I think Venerable Master, we would all agree, destroyed the afflictions.
Okay. I think yes, I believe perhaps in the future we can also view in a way the Venerable Master as an Arhat, as someone who has destroyed his afflictions. But as Venerable Master always say, he would prefer to come back as a monk again. But in terms of level of enlightenment, yeah, perhaps it's very similar to that of an Arhat. Yeah. Who else do you think can be on this list? Or, you don't have to, not just a name, but what kind of Buddhist disciples can be included? That's open for everyone, if you have any ideas. Okay, no idea? Well, for the variable master,
Can
sorry,
it be all of us? Because we can think of ourselves as stream enterers.
Mhm. Well, in a way, what you're saying is very similar to what the variable master always tell us, which is, we are Buddhas. When we believe that we are Buddhas, or we believe that we are Arhats, that means we are striving towards that path, right? We are striving towards the path of enlightenment. And instead of being attached to our afflictions, we are striving to destroy them, right? So in a way, yes, perhaps in the future, we can be on the list of Arhats as well. So I think we can also look at how variable master deal with this list to give us some idea on who can be on this list and what it takes to be on this list, right? So I think variable Yohui can also tell us a lot about this, and that is the 18 Arhats in the Buddha Museum. So I think for today, what I have planned is just a lot of storytelling. And instead of just me, talking all of the stories, I think if anyone, if you look at the list of 18 Arhats in the Buddha Museum and then you have something to share, I hope that it will be like all of us sharing together. So in the Buddha Museum, if you have been to the Buddha Museum before, if you walk all the way to the main hall, you will see a lot of stone figures erected around the side of the courtyard, and these some of them are the 18 Arhats, and some of them are the Chinese patriarch. So we're not going to talk about the Chinese patriarch today, but just the 18 Arhats. So again, in Buddhism, Arhat refers to a person who has no afflictions. The 18 Arhats are depicted in Mahayana Buddhism as the original followers of the Buddha who have followed the Noble Eightfold Path and attained enlightenment. The Arhats included in the past contain only men, yet the 18 Arhats at the Bodhi Wisdom Concourse include also 3 women who were Arhats: Mahaprajapati Bhikshuni, Utpalavarna Bhikshuni, and Bhadra Kapilani Bhikshuni. This revolutionary stroke of forward thinking not only highlights the Buddhist teaching of equality among all living beings, it also demonstrates the contemporary status of equality between genders. So remember the list of 18 Arhats that I showed before, and then we were like thinking, who are all of these people? When you look at this list of 18 Arhats, Variable Master didn't just take 3 of them out and then add 3 of the Bhikshuni in. Instead, he basically changed this list of 18 Arhats into people that we are pretty familiar with. So the first set are the 10 disciples of the Buddha, the 10 great disciples. Now, perhaps you may be a little bit more familiar with them. Have you heard of the 10 disciples of the Buddha? Have you heard of their stories? Yes, no, maybe? Maybe. So let's go to each of them. I think today we can also learn a little bit more about all of these Arhats. For me personally, I love reading the biography of people. Especially, I like to read like the Wikipedia pages of all of the people I'm interested in. And I think the reason why people love to read biography is that there's always something to learn about their life. There's always something that we can learn. So today we will go through the 18 Arhats in the Buddha Museum to understand why the Venerable Master handpicked these 18 exemplars to be standing around the Buddha Museum and welcoming everyone, right? So again, if you know their story, you raise your hand, and then I will hope that you can share with us. So the first person is Sariputra, right? The first of the disciple of the Buddha, the foremost in wisdom. Would anyone like to share his story? Have you heard of Sariputra? Yeah? Marlene, you look confused. No? Does anyone know the story of Sariputra?
I was confused with him with Subhuti. Foremost understanding emptiness, right?
Yes, Subhuti is foremost in understanding emptiness. Anyone would like to share about Sariputra? Okay, I will take that as a no. Well, amongst the Buddha's 10 disciples, we will see that some of them are from rich family, some of them are from royal families, and some of them are actually from the lower caste system. So the kind of like the lower people of the society. But Sariputra is from the Brahmin caste. And as we know, the Brahmin is actually the number one, the topmost caste of all the 4 castes. So Sariputra was born into a very rich family. And when his mother was pregnant with him, a very fun thing happened. So he has an uncle who loved to debate. And when his mother was pregnant with him, suddenly she found out that she can also debate very well. So his mother would debate with the uncle, and then the uncle would always lose. And then to the point that the uncle got so frustrated, and then he just want to learn more and more knowledge in order to beat his sister in debate. He actually let his nails grow until, he couldn't take care of himself. So there is this story about him with really long nails walking around. And the thing about Sariputra is he is extremely, extremely intelligent. So he didn't, follow the normal course of life by getting married and then building a family. Instead, he and his best friend, Malgayayana, who we will learn next, actually kind of built their own religion. So they became religious leaders, and then they have a big group of followers of about 250 people. But one day, Sariputra was walking along the road, and then he saw a man, a practitioner, walking on the road with a very solemn and mindful, in a very solemn and mindful way. And he has never seen anyone like that before, because this man, this practitioner, struck him as someone who has attained a very high level of practice. And this is a level that he has always been searching for. So he went to this practitioner and say, who is your teacher? And what do your teacher teach? Now, this is a very interesting question. He didn't say, who are you? Where do you practice? Instead, he said, who is your teacher? And what do your teacher usually teach? And the practitioner answered, my teacher is the Shakyamuni Buddha, the sage from the Shakya clan. And there is one thing that he teaches us is that all phenomena arises and ceases due to causes and condition. And just as he heard it, he immediately attained one of the levels of arhatship. Not arhat yet, but one of the 3 levels. So he immediately say, okay, bring me to your teacher. I want to learn from him. So this is how the story of how Sariputra, and Malgayayana went to take refuge under the Buddha. Just because of this one sentence, all phenomena arise and cease due to causes and condition. In Chinese, it is 诸法因缘生，诸法因缘灭. 我佛大沙门常作如是说. So this is what my teacher always teaches. So we had this is a poem that describes the teaching of dependent origination, and we always heard of it. So if Sariputra can attain enlightenment just by listening to this sentence, it should give us some clue that this is a pretty important sentence, and we can try to learn more about this. So I'm just gonna leave it at this. And obviously, as we know, Sariputra is the number one in wisdom. Out of all of the disciples of the Buddha, he's number one in wisdom. And you can always see him, in a lot of the Buddha's teaching, most famously in the Arhats Sutra, right? In Arhats Sutra, the Buddha is always saying, Sariputra, form is no different from emptiness. Emptiness is no different from form. 舍利子, so on and so forth. So this is Sariputra. And the next one is Malgalyayana. So he is a friend of Sariputra, and he is known as the foremost in supernatural powers. So you will see him do a lot of magic in a way. He does a lot of magic. But he has a very, very famous story. Does anyone know the story about Malgalyayana saving his mother? Would you like to share? Ube just shakes your head. Marlene, I think, do you know about the story of Malgalyayana saving his mother?
I think it's found. Is it found in the Kshitigarbha Sutra? The story.
It's actually very similar to the Kshitigarbha story, but they are not. But it's
yeah. I think something like that. I can't remember exactly. It's old age.
Or maybe
his mother from suffering, right?
Yes. In where?
And he offered. Wasn't he offered food to his mother, and the mother couldn't swallow it, right?
Yes.
The neck became very thin.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then he asked the Buddha, and the Buddha told him to make offering to the Sangha.
Yes.
Was it right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got it. That is the story. That is the story. So because Malgalyayana has supernatural powers, right? He can see and then listen and then go to places where normal people couldn't. So it happened after his mother passed away. So he wanted to see where his mother was reborn. And to his horror, his mother was reborn as a hungry ghost. And the thing about hungry ghosts is that even if you offer food to them, their karmic retribution doesn't allow them to eat it. So he offered food to his mother to help to to help her with her hunger. But once she took it, flames erupted from the food, and then the food just burned into ashes. So she wasn't able to eat it at all. And he went to the Buddha and say, what can I do? How can I help my mother? And then the Buddha say, you make offerings to the Sangha, especially on the last day of the rainy season retreat. And then with the merit that gathered, you dedicate this merit to your mother so that your mother will no longer be suffering in the hungry ghost realm and then instead be reborn in a better realm. So this is the story of Malgalyayana, who is actually almost like the one or two, if not the only person that the Buddha allowed to propagate the Dharma through supernatural powers. So he's the only person. Next, we have Purna. So Purna is famous for giving Dharma talks. He's very good at giving Dharma talks. And there is one very interesting story that happened between him and the Buddha. So one day, Purna, after he attained arhatship, he went to the Buddha and said, Buddha, I am ready to spread your teaching to other parts of the country. I want to go back to a place, I want to go to this particular village. And then the Buddha said, but the people in this village is so violent. You will be scolded by them if you go there. And then Purna say, well, I am very thankful that all they do is just scold me and not hit me with sticks. And then the Buddha say, but those people are so violent that they will hit you with sticks. And Purna say, well, I have to thank them because luckily they are just hitting me with sticks and not killing me. And then the Buddha say, but what if they get so violent that they kill you with their sticks? And he said, then I thank them for liberating me from this filthy body. And then the Buddha say, okay, you pass, you can go. So this is a very fun story about the Buddha and Purna. And it shows us how fearless, we should be as Buddhists to propagate the Dharma, to propagate Buddhism. So Purna, that's why he is known as foremost in giving a Dharma talk. He's very good at sharing the Dharma. Because, he actually successfully did spread the Dharma to the barbaric country and then wasn't killed by them. So good on him. Next, we have Subhuti. So Subhuti is foremost in understanding emptiness. He has a very fun story. So when he was born in a very, very wealthy family, in fact, you can think of his family as the richest family in the city. And then when he was born, all of the treasures, all of the money, all of the jewels, all of the valuables in the family disappeared. And then they were like asking, oh, was there like a thief that stole everything? But then, a wise man say, oh no, it is your son, right? Your son is born, and then he is destined to have an understanding of emptiness, of shunyata. So this is why this happened. And that's true, after he was born, and then a few days later, all of the treasures came back. So this is a very fun story about Subhuti. And of course, Subhuti is very famously portrayed in the Diamond Sutra. So we won't, spend a lot of time talking about emptiness in the Diamond Sutra, but just to share that Subhuti, that there is a person named Subhuti, and then he's an Arhat, and most importantly, he has an understanding of the of emptiness, of shunyata. The next person is Katyayana. He is not one of the well-known disciples of the Buddha. He's lesser known, but Katyayana is known for being foremost in debate. So he is very, very intelligent, very sharp-minded. And the way that he taught was different from Purna, which we discussed in the previous disciple. Purna can speak to a great assembly of people. But what Katyayana do is he speaks to individuals. So during the time of the Buddha, you have a lot of practitioners, a lot of people have the idea that they should leave their home behind and then go cultivation and search for liberation. This is pretty standard in India. Even now we still see that cultivation going on in India, and a lot of people have this idea of cultivation. So what he does is that he would, for example, other people of other religion would come to challenge him on Buddhism. So they would have a debate back and forth. And then at the end, of course, Katyayana would always won them over with the teaching of the Buddha. So that's why he became known as as foremost in debate. The next is Mahakashyapa. So does anyone know Mahakashyapa? He's one of the more well-known disciples. Have you heard of Mahakashyapa? 大迦摄尊者, 大迦摄尊者. So one thing to know about him is that he is foremost in ascetic practice, which means he does the way that he practices is the really tough, the really dirty and tough kind of practice, which is sitting in like cemeteries, sitting next to dead people, living under very harsh conditions, living under a tree, begging for food. He, in a very practicing in a very very kind of like difficult and harsh condition. So that is Mahakashyapa. So does anyone know any stories about Mahakashyapa?
Is he the one with
Xixiang.
smile?
Hi.
Hi, Subu. I think I roughly know a little bit about, I mean, pardon me if I'm wrong. Because actually, I have joined the 42 Sutra last year. So they mentioned about the Mahakashyapa. I think the story about Kasyapa is as far as I can remember, okay, he's someone that he doesn't make friend with cannot get along. So called is different from another students from the Buddha. Then everybody like looking at him as if he's too, how to say that, what's the right word, maybe very different from them. Then but his way he's taught is actually exactly what is Buddha teaching to. So he seems doesn't he's only like living by his own word according to the other disciple. Yeah, but before he's actually become the disciple of Buddha, if I'm not wrong, he has a very good so-called, what they call it, he has been very persistent, I would say, or yeah, in against the external forces or influence. Yeah, I think that's all I remember. Laughing, I don't want to say wrongly. Sorry.
No, thank you for sharing. I didn't see your name. You didn't appear. Sorry. Can I have your...
Yes, I can't remember. I use my son Peachy, Jenny, or Darren, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think last year we have a Chen Guozhang performance, and then the time my classmate performed as a Mahakashyapa and the leper woman. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, the Mahakashyapa and leper woman. So he's the only one that willing to accept the offering from the leper woman, and then drink the porridge for leftover from the leper woman. So it's very touching in the sense. Yeah, very compassionate. I mean, that's all I remember because of the Chen Guozhang story. So sorry.
No, thank you. So you did mention one of a very interesting story about Mahakashyapa. So because Mahakashyapa was so used to practicing under very harsh and difficult condition, so one day as he went alms begging, he saw this leper woman, as you say. And then this woman is obviously very poor and isolated from the society. No one would go to her because of her sickness. And then, she was like lamenting on her fate, and then Mahakashyapa goes up to her and say, "Do you have anything to offer to me?" And she said, "I know it is because my lack of offering, my lack of generosity in my previous life, this is why I am suffering in poverty and then and in illness in this life. So I do want to offer to you, but I honestly have nothing. I am so poor. I basically have nothing at all that can offer to you." And then Mahakashyapa said that, there's some old rice water, sitting just next to you. You can offer me that. And then she said, "But it's smelly, it's stinky. It's been 3 days, and then it's just stinky rice water. And then I didn't want to throw it away because, I can still eat it, but I don't dare to offer such a disgusting food to you. But Mahakashyapa say, don't think like that, I will accept it. And then Mahakashyapa wanted her to practice that generosity so that she can earn the merit, to be reborn into a better life next, in the next rebirth. So she offered it to Mahakashyapa, and then to kind of like calm her mind, Mahakashyapa drank the stinky water right in front of her to show that he has truly, accepted this offering. So this is Mahakashyapa. He feel that, the ascetic practice, the difficult and harsh practice is the way for him. So the Buddha also allows him to do that. And he is also honored as one of the 18 Arhats in the Buddha Museum. So I think because of time, let's just go through some of the other Arhats before reaching some of them that I really want to introduce to you. So we also have Aniruddha. Aniruddha is foremost in heavenly vision. So he has a fun story as well. So he fell asleep one day when the Buddha was teaching. And then the Buddha say, if you keep on sleeping, you will never attain enlightenment. And then he said, okay, from now on, I will never sleep. I will never close my eyes. And obviously, because of this, he lost his vision. And so the Buddha helped him to regain it. That's why he is known as foremost in heavenly vision. Next, we have Upali. So all of the disciples that we just mentioned before, they are actually all from the Brahmin caste, which means they are rich people. They have very, very high social status. All of them have very high social status. And then they are all learned and very rich people. But they chose to give up their home life and then chose to become the disciple of the Buddha. But Upali is very different. Upali was from the lower caste. He is one of the laborers. And what he was before was he was actually a barber, and he would cut the hair of the Shakyan princess. So, Shakyamuni Buddha's cousins, he would cut their hair. And then there's a very fun story of how he renounced before all the princes. Rahula, just now when we look at the list of 18 Arhats that we do not know, one of them was Rahula. And this is the same Rahula. Rahula is the son of the Buddha. I think if you have watched the Siddhartha the musical, he should be you should know Rahula pretty well. And of course, Ananda. Ananda is also prominently featured in Shakyamuni Buddha's life, so I won't go into him. If you want to, read about all of the 10 disciples, you can read the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha. Even though the Venerable Master did write a book on the 10 disciples, but I don't think it has been published into English. So maybe in the future. But if you want to have a very fun read on the 10 disciples, the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha has one chapter completely dedicated to the 10 disciples. So now we have, out of the 18, we just mentioned 10 of them. Now we have notable disciples. So first of all is Chuddapantaka. I think you probably know about Chuddapantaka, right? He's the dum-dum. He's the dum-dum who had to sweep the floor, but attained arhatship, attained enlightenment precisely because of sweeping the floor. So as we can see in this list of 18 arhats, the Venerable Master didn't just include the high and mighty disciples. He also included disciples from a poorer and lower background. And he also included a disciple who was a dum-dum and then who actually attained arhatship despite being a dum-dum, right? So the next is Pindola. Okay. Pindola is lesser known. I'm just gonna let you read it, and then I will jump to the next one. Sorry. Yes, Kalodain. Now, Kalodain is fun because he was actually one of the 6 notorious bhikshu. So these 6 notorious bhikshus create a lot of problems and conflicts in the Sangha community, and then they just gave the Buddha a lot of headache. And despite being, one of the troublemakers, he finally come to his senses and then attained arhatship as well. So as you can see, this list is actually very, very encompassing. You have all of these different disciples of the Buddha who come from different parts of the society, who have different, tendencies and different intellectual and then different attitude, but all of them successfully attained arhatship under the Buddha's guidance, right? These 2 are more special, the dragon subduing arhat and then the tiger taming arhat. But what we can take from this is that the tiger and the dragon are metaphorical or symbolical of our own afflictions, greed, hatred, and ignorance. So as an arhat, in order to become an arhat, subduing our afflictions is the way to go. So they are showing us that we should subdue our afflictions, our afflictions that are like tigers and dragons. So now we have talked about 15 of the 18 arhats. Here comes the 3 female disciples that the Venerable Master included. Now, why is this so important and revolutionary? Is that in the past 1,000, 2,000 years, basically, the people that we remember, the great disciples that we remember, most of them are men disciples, bhikshus. Even the 10 great disciples that were listed before, all of them are bhikshus. There are no bhikshunis. And a lot of the stories that we share, that we pass down, they are stories of the bhikshus. They are stories about bhikshus, about male practitioners. But in Buddhist tradition, there is, even though there is not a lot of female disciples, but we do have their record, even though it's not a lot, but we do have their record, and then they are kept in a book called the Book of Senior Female Disciples, the Mahateri. So all of these female disciples, Venerable Master picked 3 of them to stand in the courtyard of the Buddha Museum. And the first one is Mahaprajapati. Now, she is the most important bhikshuni because she is actually the first bhikshuni, and she is actually the person who enable, female or woman practitioner to be ordained as monastics. So she is the one who actually made it all possible. So who is Mahaprajapati? And again, because you all live in Cebu and then have probably seen the Shakyamuni Buddha, the Siddhartha musical like maybe 100 times already. So you probably are very familiar with Mahaprajapati. She is the Buddha's aunt, right? And the sister of the Buddha's mom, so his aunt. And basically, Mahaprajapati raised Prince Siddhartha, right? And so, after Prince Siddhartha left, he became the Buddha. And then when he came back to Kapilavastu to share the teaching back to his homeland, everyone accepted it very happily. But the story for Mahaprajapati began when the king died, when King Suddhodana died. So she waited until that moment. So after the king died, she felt that, there's really nothing for her in the country anymore. There's really nothing for her in a palace anymore. And what she really wanted is a life of cultivation. So she went to the Buddha with 500 Shakyan women, 500 of the women, and they all went to the Buddha and say, "Oh, Buddha, please accept it into your monastic community. We also want to practice as a monastic." But obviously, the Buddha said no. And then the Buddha kind of traveled to another place. And then so they ran after the Buddha, right? They're like very, very firm in their faith. So they ran after the Buddha. And then again, for the second time, they say to the Buddha, "Oh, Buddha, please accept us into the Sangha. Let us practice as monastics." But the Buddha said again, no. And then the Buddha went to the next place again. So this time they want to show the Buddha how determined they were. So they shaved their hair, and then they put on their the practitioner robes, and then they run to the Buddha again, And it was a really long journey, and then they were really tired, and then their feet are bleeding from, all of that walking and running. So they went to the Buddha again, but this time the Buddha refused to meet them. And instead, so they had no choice but to look for Ananda. And they say, "Oh, Ananda, please tell the Buddha that we are very determined in our faith and we want to practice as monastic, under the Buddha." And Ananda is actually very soft-hearted. He looked at all of these women, their feet are bleeding, they are probably really hungry, they have been traveling for a really long time. And then he really felt for them. So he went to the Buddha and said, "Oh, Buddha, don't you always say that both men and women can attain enlightenment equally?" And then the Buddha said, "Yes, that is true." And then Ananda asked, "But why are you not allowing the women to be part of the Sangha?" And then the Buddha said, if the Buddha remained quiet, And he said that, if the women join the Sangha, the time that the Dharma would last here on earth will be shorter. Yeah, so that is recorded in the story. And Ananda asked again, but don't you think that they should still also deserve the chance? And the Buddha finally said yes. And Mahaprajapati became the first lady to renounce as a monastic. And of course, the rest of the 500 bhikshunis that followed her. So she attained enlightenment very quickly after, becoming a monastic. And she really is the first female. And, as a bhikshuni myself, I have a lot to thank for Mahaprajapati for making the first step, for making this possible. And the next is Utpalavarna. Utpalavarna has a very, very, very interesting story. So Utpalavarna, before, she has a very lovely marriage. She has a loving husband, she has a loving daughter, everything was going fine. But one day she discovered that her husband cheated on her. So she got really, really, really angry, and she made the decision to leave behind her husband and her daughter. So she left the family, she found another man who was good to her, and then, she became very happy with the second husband. But one day, she discovered that her second husband was also cheating on her. And to her horror, the person that her husband was cheating on was actually her daughter from the first marriage. So can you imagine the pain and suffering that she must have gone through? So she started to become very revengeful. And the way that she wanted to exert revenge on a society that did so bad to her is to become a prostitute. So she became a prostitute. And then one day, she saw Malgalyayana. We mentioned Malgalyayana before, the disciple with the superpowers. And she was trying to, pull him down to her level. She's not happy that, now she has sunk so low. So she tried to pull him down to this level too. And thinking to herself that if I can influence a great disciple, a great, practitioner like Malgayayana into my level, then I have succeeded in my mission. But of course that didn't happen, right? Malgayayana actually helped her to see her own suffering and her own pain. And so she was very touched by it, and she decided to renounce as a monastic. And after her renunciation, she practiced really hard. And of course, she attained arhatship. And she also became known as the female practitioner who is number 1 in supernatural powers, just like Malgayayana. The very last is Bhadra Kapilani. Bhadra Kapilani, I'm not going to say too much about her. I just want to make a conclusion because the time is almost up. I just want to say that, Arhats, again, going back to the very first question that we discussed, Arhats are people who have basically destroyed all of their afflictions. They have destroyed their afflictions, and then they have overcome the cycle of samsara. So what it means is that they will no longer experience birth and death. And once their physical body dies, they enter into nirvana, they enter into bliss and then peace. So the 18 Arhats have always been protectors of Buddhism. We see them in the temples as protectors. We see them as Dhamma protectors. And then basically the Buddha asked them to stay in this world so
she just disappeared. Okay, who's your favorite Arahat? Keep quiet.
The dum-dum
Why?
gives me hope.
Gives me hope.
So are you sweeping the floor now, Ube?
Wiping the dust. Now you know the Karate Kid, wipe.
The dumb one. Okay. Well, I heard two person in the same day in talking about the dumb one because they get inspired by the character in the musical. Yeah. Okay. Well, Wearable Zutong is back.
yeah, I pull a hat trick. Surprise, I'm back.
Everybody, once they turn.
Welcome back.
Okay. Anyway, just to conclude, I think what the Venerable Master want us to understand from both this article and also his new list of the 18 Arhats is that, first of all, anyone has the potential, everyone has the potential to become an Arhat, an enlightened being that is without any care, that is liberated and free. So from the list of the new 18 Arhats, we have people from all walks of society. We have people, we have men and women. We have people who, you know, used to cut other people's hair. We have revengeful prostitute. We have wise queens. You know, anyone has the potential. Everybody has the potential. And Buddhist practice is never limited to just anyone, any group. So all of us here, you know, we can all become arhats as long as we put our minds to it, right? So I think that's all I will share for today. I would love to also hear from you about what you think about the 18 arhats. Yeah, open up to you.
Sufu, I have a question.
Yeah,
Can we get the soft copy of the 18 Arhat story
the what?
that just so Sufu share with us the 18 Arhat and also the Bhikshuni, right? When can I mean, because it's quite fast, so I wanted to know about the story, more of it.
Oh.
Where can I get the information of that?
Oh, just go to Buddha Museum website.
Oh,
I got it
okay,
from
okay.
there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sufu. Okay, in that case, I also want to share my thought. I mean, I'm late in joining because I just come back from my work. But for me, because of the Chen Guozhang, I only know the Mahakasyapa, but I know about the Queen Maya and the sister brought up the Buddha, but not really know in detail. So this story, actually, this is a very good knowledge for me. To, as what Sufu said, everybody have the chance, the opportunity, so long we are able to cultivate our mind to the right thought. So it's very empowerment us to learn more and continue to cultivate our heart, our thought. Thank you, Sufu.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for your sharing. Also, you can also read the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha. There is a section with the 10 great disciples and also stories about all of the disciples that I've just mentioned, including, you know, the sweeping Chuda Pantaka, you know, the all of them. They are all mentioned in the Shakyamuni Buddha. And if you read Chinese, you can read the 10弟子传. Yeah.
Thank you, Sufu.
No problem.
Thank
Thank you again. Thank
so
you.
much.
Anyone else would like to share before we end tonight's session?
That would be helpful if the 研究院 can translate the 10 disciples biography
Okay.
for the English speakers.
Yeah. Well, we do try to aim to translate, well, basically all of the books, but yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely put that up. Well, I personally I prefer stories a lot than, you know, sometimes to doctrine because it's more interesting. Yeah, it's more fun, but I think there's always something to learn from the stories, and hopefully you know you you like these stories, and then you find something about them that can be inspiring to you as it has did for me. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sufu. This is very true because I learned about the Anand and through the Surangama Sutra from the story of Anand and the lady who tried to pursue Anand. So it's a very interesting story. Otherwise, I'm lazy to read 300 over pages of Surangama Sutra. Yeah, it's very true. I share the same thought. Thank you, Sufu.
Wait, Fasa, maybe before we end, you can share a little bit about those two you mentioned, talk about Suda Pantaka. That they're inspired by the stories of Oba. How?
Me?
What did they tell?
Huh? What?
The two you mentioned ba who
I mean,
were inspired by Suda Pantaka?
when I mention it,
Just mention you met two people today.
I
You
think
really
she said
confused
today.
me. When did I mention it?
Just earlier when Verbal Tutong was cut off.
Oh, the dumb one.
Yes.
Okay, what is this about?
I
You
don't-
really don't. I really get lost.
I don't think Yohui Fashu said that she met. I think what she said was the dum dum one was mentioned, like, you know, she heard about the dum dum one twice today.
Twice in a day, and they get
Yeah.
inspired of from the character from the
Yes.
musical.
Yes. So if I was the other one who said I like the dum dum one because he gives hope, then who is the other one?
Not just you. The one is from Owen's staff. What she all remember about the musical is the sweep the dust away. And the same day I talked to Jun Ray, and he also share the people in South Africa after they watched the Siddhartha musical. And what they remember is also sweep the dust away.
Yeah, that's true,
They
Sipu.
feel
And
very touching.
you know, Sipu, which person remembered Sweep the Dust Away? It was the Minister of Education of South Africa. So she
Wow.
was the one who specifically said that remembered Chuda Pintaka, the character of Chuda Pintaka, and she was contemplating on it because the dust of your mind, you know, like that. So it was the Minister of Education who remembered it. She specifically mentioned it in her speech during the going away dinner for the musical.
See. Wow. And I also like the story of Mahakashapa and his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
Mahakashyapa and his wife, who is the last person on the slide, Badra Kapilani. So go read that story.
Yeah. Well, is there a English so they can read it?
Yeah, the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha.
Okay.
Yeah, just go to the 10 disciples section.
Okay. Yeah. Go back to read. All right. So
Super sorry. I tried to go to the humanistic Buddhism to get the 18 Arhat, right? But I think when I Google it doesn't come up.
The Buddha Museum.
The
Yeah, Buddha Museum. You know what? I can share the link to Venerable Yohui, and then if you you have a group chat?
or you can share it in the top. I mean the chat.
Okay, I will have
Oh
to.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Sufu, you can share the chat because I raised a question in the chat. Thank you, Sufu.
Oh,
Thank you,
okay.
sister.
Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Oh, please don't wait for me.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So we just go ahead and do the transform merit. House join, please.
Kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. May we cherish and build affinities to benefit all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Venerable Chutong and Venerable Yohui, for guiding us.
I found it. Sorry. Let me just paste it in the chat group.
Tomorrow we can
Thank you
all
very
buy
much,
brooms.
Okay. Here. Okay.
Okay, copy the links.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It's
Shifu.
thank you all everyone. It's bilingual, so you can read the stories.
Yes, it's good to have English. Thank you so much, Sufu. Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Good
much for
night,
having
Sufu.
me. Bye. Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, see you next week.
Bye bye. See you.